morning, everybody, and welcome to The Artist Well. My guest this morning is Joe Hogan. Now, I came across Joe in a sort of a very circuitous way because I was at not an exhibition, a sort of a gallery exhibition in the art. John Daly of Hillsborough Fine Art. And I was just yapping to him about the exhibits and all that kind of thing. And he said, if you want to see something really special, he said, go right down to the end of the room and look for some baskets. And I said, what? Baskets? He said, yeah, absolutely. So Stephen O'Connell has a gallery down in Clonakilty, and he was looking after the stand there and spoke to me about Joe. And some of his work was just so intricate and so just ingenious that I said, I have to get him on to the Artist Well. So thanks to Stephen, Joe and I made contact, and here we are today. So you're very welcome, Joe. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning and thank you, Alan.
Not at all. Not at all. It's really great to have you. Tell us where you are, where we're talking to you from.
I'm in Lochnafuia or Lochnafuia. It's in Joyce Country in northwest Connemara.
All right. Okay. And is that near Clonbar?
It's between Clonbur and Mam and Leenane. It
All
would
right.
be
Yes.
the same distance from each of those three towns.
Okay. And are you fairly desolate? I mean, are you really out in the open? You're not in a village or anything like that?
No, no, but
No.
you could call it remote, but I don't think I would. Yeah,
Everything is relative.
it
And are
is.
you
Yeah.
from that area, Joe?
No, I'm from the flatlands of East Galway, but Dolores, my wife, and myself were cycling around here many years ago, and we thought that it would be something very special, connection with the landscape, if you want, and
Mm.
we felt it would be a very nice thing to be able to live in a place like this,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what drew me to basket making in the first place.
Okay. And what is it about basket making? I mean, where were you first exposed to the whole idea of making baskets?
Well, for me, I think the connection was the willow, the fact that you can
Mm.
grow your own raw material. People mightn't realize, but willow can grow from cuttings. So you just put a piece into the ground and it grows, and that turns a country location into an advantage. Um,
Mm.
so we were also interested in gardening and small holding and all of that kind of thing, especially growing our own food. So
Yeah.
the basket making and willow growing tied in very much with that.
Yeah. And when you say you can just put a cutting into the ground, I mean, do you not have to kind of promote its roots, the growth or something
Mm,
like that? Or do you
Not
literally
really.
stick it in the ground?
Yeah, yeah. The main thing it wants is just clean ground. So if you grow it through a membrane of some sort,
Mm.
you will have a yield within the first year. And it's an amazing, magical plant. And
Yes.
of course, as a material, I have a lot of gratitude um, for its existence and
Mm.
towards it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I gather you have various areas that you planted with different types of willow. Are there many different types of willow?
Well, there are numerous types,
Mm.
but for me, there would have been a time might have had 20 varieties, but now I would have maybe seven or eight main varieties that I use a lot of,
Yeah.
which over the period of time, over 40 years now growing it, I've developed a fondness for or find that it suits this area or is easy to grow organically or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are you literally surrounded by willow, or do you have other places outside of where you live that you grow it?
No, it's not. I don't need that much. Half an acre to an acre would be enough for a basket
Oh, it
maker
is.
a year.
Okay.
So it's not that I need a massive amount of material. Though sometimes when you go into the willow barn and see all the willow around, you might think it's a lot. Um,
Yes.
when I used to teach basket making, I bought in willow for that purpose. But
Hmm.
for my own work, just use the willow I grow here.
Okay. And I know from looking at some of your work previous to this that there are different colors or shades of color.
Yes.
Are they all different species of willow?
Yes, just naturally
Yeah.
occurring
So
varieties.
it's not as if you dye them or you bathe them in some color.
No,
No.
no, it's yeah.
Yeah.
And I nearly always work with willow with the skin on, with the bark on. Uh,
Hmm.
that is probably one of the biggest changes between, say, the basket making that I would have seen when I was starting out,
yeah,
um, learning basket making, because a lot of the time the bark was taken off. That makes preparing the willow quicker and easier for the basket maker, but I think the surface is less interesting
okay,
afterwards. Yeah.
yeah. And we might get into the sort of the technicalities of how you prepare the willow and so on for
Yeah.
basket making later on. But where did you learn the skill? I know there was a guy called Tommy who was a big influence on you. Can you tell me maybe about him?
Well, first of all, I went down to, I hadn't met, Tommy was my neighbour when we came to live here. But
Yeah.
first of all, I went to live in Cork for a year and I met two brothers down there, Tom and Michael Quinlan. I was supposed to get an apprenticeship, Alan, but that didn't work out in Cork. And so I was actually trying to teach myself basket making, and I called to them, and they told me what I wasn't doing right, but
Hmm.
were very encouraging. And I came back a month later, having incorporated their suggestions. And from there on in, I used to call to them maybe once a month with the work
Mm.
I had done. So it wasn't an ideal apprenticeship, but they were extremely helpful to me.
Yeah.
So when I came to live here, I was already able to make baskets. I was making cradles mainly, and some furniture, and lard baskets. And
Yeah.
uh, the time we came here, then my neighbor,
Mm.
Tommy Joyce, um, he came across the river to welcome us to the place, and he was surprised, I think, that I was a basket maker because he was
Yeah.
one as well.
Yes.
But the basket he was going to teach me, which is a donkey creel, which
Mm.
I think I sent you an image of.
Yeah, we'll be seeing that in a sec. Yeah.
Yeah, so that particular basket, to be number two in the images, um, he it was a very unique way of making a basket, and I had never seen one,
Mm.
even though it's very much part of our tradition, because professional basket makers didn't make that type of work, and that was a
Oh.
huge, um, if you like, long-term insight for me that there was a whole indigenous style of basket making that
Mm.
I knew nothing about.
All right. Okay. Now, I presume, years ago, there was a big tradition of basket making because it was a very necessary skill to have.
Yes.
Is it a sort of a dying breed, or are there still people who are carrying on the tradition the way you are, and indeed expanding it into more contemporary work?
Well, I would say that yes, there was a period in the late 70s when I actually kind of got into it where most of the people doing it felt that it didn't have a future. Uh, the Quinlans and the Shanahans were both professional basket makers down in the southeast.
Hmm.
Um, the Shanahans were in Carrick-on-Suir and the Quinlans were in Tallow Hill, but I don't think either of them thought that there was a future for basket making.
Yeah.
Um, but that hasn't proved to be true, really. There's always been a core of makers who kept going with it. There was a few down in West Cork, Norbert Platz, I can think of, and a few others.
Yeah.
And there's a girl moved to Northern Ireland called Alison Fitzgerald, and she saw willow growing up there and got very interested in basket making and makes these wonderful frame baskets that we call a skiog. So she's kept that kind of particular style of basket making alive.
Hmm.
And over a period of time, not everybody who makes baskets does it for a living. Some of them would be as what you call amateurs. And
Sure.
for me, that word is sometimes people look down on amateurs, whereas I look at the root word of it and I see people doing it for the love of it. And
Hmm.
to me, it's a hugely important thing. And I think the chances of basket making surviving is very much in the hands of people like that who love it as an activity and appreciate the
Yeah.
baskets themselves.
I remember when you and I started to talk, I referred to you as an artist, and you said, I won't say you took exception to it, but but you said, no, no, no. And I mean, I describe an artist as somebody whose passion skill, and all these sort of elements. And it is everything that you have, and you have it in spades, as I said in one of my emails.
Yeah.
Why don't you call yourself an artist?
I'm not, if somebody wants to call me an artist, that's fine. But
Hmm.
it's not a claim I'd be that comfortable with because I have no formal training of any sort anyway, not even in basket making,
Yeah.
actually.
Nor did Francis Bacon, but we'll leave that.
Yeah, but I suppose I'd feel that artist might be a phrase that other people can confer on you. Maybe it's something you can earn. I don't really know, but I'm also kind of very happy with the label of craftsperson because I
Yes.
think the skill level that we pick up over the years of making, that's quite important.
Mm.
Um, if I've strayed into the world of art, I think it's partly because I have felt that the whole question of belonging to the earth and the sensibility about, say, climate and everything like that. I'm not seeing that coming up that much in
Okay.
the art world, and I
Yeah.
feel that it could do with uh, addressing that more.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that the fact that when we look at your work and we see how it evolved and developed over the years, I think people would probably take my side rather than your side in terms of,
Okay, that's fine.
and it is meant as a compliment, Joe.
Yeah.
Okay. So listen, when you started this, um, we all have to make a living.
Yes.
Did you find it easy to make a living out of weaving baskets, or did you get into the teaching of it and so on?
Well, I didn't start teaching until about 10 years in. So
Okay.
um, I didn't find it that easy, but at that time there were a lot of craft shops. Tourists, when they would come to Ireland, would often take home souvenirs and things
Mm.
like that. And Irish people too. There was a kind of a bit of a craft revival in the
Yeah.
70s.
Yes.
Um, and so there was a small craft shop, for instance, in Achill Island. There was another one in Kinvara, and they were both very different and stocked very different things.
Yes.
Um, but they reflected the personality and the passion of the owner.
Mm.
That's kind of a very different world now because to the extent that there are craft shops, they tend to be clones of each other a little bit and
Mm.
run by chains. But um, so I was selling mainly log baskets and shopping baskets
Mm.
to these
Yes.
type of shops. And as well as the donkey creel, Tommy also introduced me to another basket, which was a skib or a kishog, and
Yes.
it was a low potato basket. And I started making some of these and incorporating some colored willow that I was growing myself
Mm.
into those. Um, so it was essentially a question of wholesaling baskets and making, I suppose, having a name to make X number per day. So it
Mm.
wasn't that easy, but on the other hand, my standard was improving and
Yeah.
I was getting satisfaction from that. And I was also kind of chuffed to be able to survive doing
Yeah.
something like this,
Sure.
because it
Yeah.
wasn't a given.
No. 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 Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But then when you started to teach, how did that sort of blend in with your practice? I mean, was it something that you actually gained a lot from?
Yes. But first of all, what happened was a guy came here. Um, and he asked me, would I do a basket course? And it might seem a very strange thing to say, Alan, that I had never crossed my mind, despite the fact that I was keen to learn basket making myself. But it,
Yes.
it never struck me that other people would want to learn in that way,
Mm.
and especially the idea of running a course. So
Yes.
we rented a place in Glanbiogue, which is about 4 or 5 miles from here, and people were able to stay there. And I ran my first course, and I put a little art or an advertisement in a magazine called Common Ground, which was a kind of a self-sufficiency style magazine. I think that was based in Leitrim,
Yeah.
and instead of just, I was looking for 5 people, I think, and I think I got 8 or 9. So I ended up running 2 courses.
Ah, very
In a
good.
way, I kind of never looked back after that. I ran 2 or 3 courses every year for a while, and then that gradually expanded. But I mentioned to you, earlier about how much I also feel I gained or learned
Yes,
from teaching.
yes, yes.
Not always about techniques, uh, but just about, first of all, why am I doing something in a particular way? Because
Mm.
somebody will ask you that question, and um, you 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 kind of have to rethink why you're doing something in a particular
Well,
way.
exactly. Yeah, because we both actually got that feeling from teaching that something that is instinctive to you, you actually are almost unconscious of. And when somebody says, "Well, why are you doing it that way?" Somebody say, "Ah, why am I doing it that way?"
Yes,
Okay, I got to think of
and,
that.
but it's a good question, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is.
And it sends you back to, um, I suppose, thinking again and seeing, would you change anything or improve it? It does make you question what you're at yourself.
Yeah.
But for me too, my getting into teaching happened in parallel with my growing interest in what I call the indigenous baskets of Ireland,
Yes. Yeah.
creels, lobster pots, and things like that. And I think um, that conveyed, I got the message, if you like, from the people who were coming on the courses. First
Mm.
of all, that I wasn't alone in thinking these baskets were important,
Yeah.
even though they were quite disregarded in a lot of respects.
Mm.
Um, but I also felt that it was a unique moment for maybe meeting people who were still alive who were making these baskets.
Yes.
Um, I never
Did
got
that
on
inspire you to write the, sorry for interrupting you. Did that
yeah,
inspire you to write the book? Because
the
you
basket making an
produced,
Ireland book. Yeah.
have you got that there? Just have a have
Yeah.
a have a
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. That's it there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just lift it up a wee bit so we can see it.
Okay.
Basket making in Ireland. Yeah.
So that's kind of has drawings and illustrations of how to make, but
Yeah.
also about the baskets themselves, the people who use them, and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it was um, kind of over a 20-year period. I didn't really mean to write a book, Alan. I meant to write a little piece about how a creel was made.
Mm.
And And that's what I did. And then I realized, well, actually, that wasn't that difficult. So I could now write a piece about how a skib is made and
Mm.
bit by bit. So it grew as a project gradually over a period of time. And the Heritage Council was only recently formed, and they, I think, gave a grant towards the publication of it.
Okay. And where can you get it, Joe?
Charlie Byrne's bookshop, I think, in Galway, or else from me. Yeah.
All right, direct. Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
But Charlie
Well,
Burns has a stock almost all the time. So that's the
all right.
idea.
Well, we'll put that on the video for the recording. We'll put that in the show notes as they call them, the
Okay.
description, and link to you as well if somebody is interested in that. But I mean, there's a huge amount of tradition and heritage in that, and in the type of different baskets that have been made over the years. And it's wonderful to have that, in print for all time for people to see.
Well, I suppose it is. I wouldn't ever say it for all time because, those kind of things
Yeah.
are, their interest waxes and wanes, perhaps. But I think it is important. There was a very good book that inspired me, Irish Folkways by Eston Evans.
Yeah.
It's out of print now, but it certainly inspired me to feel that recording something, it's not as good as seeing it made, but it's
Hmm.
certainly an important thing. Uh,
Yeah.
and actually, as it stands now, we're also doing a few videos of making a few of the traditional baskets. The creel and the lobster pot have already been done, and they're on the Irish Basket Making Association YouTube channel.
All right. Oh, very good. Okay. All right.
But
Now,
they're really for basket makers rather than for. It's just a more how to weave it uh,
I know.
uh,
Yeah.
thing
Okay.
rather than.
Now, you have a studio kind of built onto the house, is it?
Well, it's separate building, yeah, but it's
That-
only about 50 yards, so it's very
Okay.
easy to get to. Yeah.
It might be easy to get to, but the Wi-Fi doesn't find it very easy to get to.
No, no, no.
So you
I
very
like that
kindly
though.
did a quick recording of it, and we're going to show that now, Joe. All right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is bog pine piled up. So that wood has been largely cleaned already with wire brush and everything like that. And I try to not do too much with it because you see that kind of white bleached coloring. That's
Yes.
what the weathering has done. So that was kind of on the surface of the bog, a place
Mm,
called the Jerks, um, between here and Trumakeedy. And the peat was cut away, leaving that wood exposed. If there are
okay.
darker colors in the wood, it's where it was under the peat and it would have been dug or pulled out of it.
Yeah. When I saw that first, I thought it was the sort of thing you'd find on a beach.
Yeah, well, it's driftwood is the other material that I use, but
Do
actually,
you?
what inspired me to ever use wood was this particular area
Hmm.
in uh, about 4 or 5 miles away. It's kind of on the foot of the Mom Trasta Plateau, and it's a place that I walk quite a bit. So I do a
Yes.
good bit of hill walking anyway.
Yeah.
And I was noticing this wood and really amazed by its. I thought I was very, very struck by it. It has a certain kind of gaunt beauty, if you like, and
Hasn't it?
I
Yeah.
wanted to incorporate it into the work in some way. And it took me a good few years to figure out how I would do that.
Sure. Now I've heard of bog oak, but I've never heard of this type of wood.
Well, bog pine and bog
Fine.
oak are the two main woods that you find, and the bog pine would be more the relatively poorer lands. So, in other words, less fertile.
I
So it
see.
would be what they call, sometimes they call them petrified forests, where there
Mm,
are these stumps of bog pine coming up out of the bog.
yeah.
And sometimes then, so that in this area, that would usually be bog pine. But
Hmm.
bog oak would tend to be much more the Midlands where oak trees grow.
All right. Okay.
And
Yes.
just interestingly, one of the things about, say, those petrified forests is people, it wasn't that the trees were cut down, but some climate catastrophe
Hmm.
happened 6,000 years ago of some sort to cause the trees not to be able to grow there. And there might be a little warning for us in our own complacency there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It's very interesting wood, and it has an extraordinary shape to it as well.
Yeah.
So now we're going through. That's where you keep your
That's,
wood.
yeah, well, that's just the kind of sheltering place from the west wind. Yeah.
Ah, yes. Okay.
And this is the workshop proper, the studio. Yeah.
Okay.
And there are some rods that are sorted out for the project that I'm working on. So they're
Okay.
in condition, they're soaked and have been steamed as well. And
Right.
steaming is a process that's the box that we're standing in, where I can drive steam into the willow after soaking to make them
Yeah.
a little bit more flexible and they will retain their flexibility for longer.
Okay. I
Uh,
think at the end of that we come back to that, and I'll
yeah.
talk to you because I want to ask you a few questions about it.
So the little low
Here's
seat
something
on
you're
the
working on
right.
at the moment.
Yeah, well, that's it on the floor,
Yeah.
and I am sitting on a stool to make that rather
Hmm.
than you see there's a little seat with a blue cushion.
Just
Uh,
here.
yeah,
Yeah.
but so I'd normally sit on that if I'm making lower, smaller baskets, but for the piece of work with the wood collars I'm at there, it's a bit too large for that. So
Mm.
I'm making it upside down with the collar, the wood put into the collar of wood, and I'll be sitting on a stool when I pick it back up again.
Yeah. And making it upside down, that's kind of unusual, I gather, is it?
It's very unusual, and it's an idea that I got from the donkey creel, which is the basket that I said my neighbor
Yeah.
Tommy showed me how to make.
Right. Okay. Okay. And tell me about the big piece there hanging on the wall
So
next to
that's
the stove.
a skib or a kishog,
Yeah.
and that one's a meter wide, so that's about as large as I would make. And you can see there's different natural varieties of willow in it.
Yes.
Um, so
And while we're on the subject, can you
yeah,
explain to me the actual use of a skib?
so the smaller sizes, maybe if you can imagine me about 24 inches or two
Yeah.
thirds the size of that, which is still quite large, they would have taken their pot of potatoes. spilled the boiling water and the potatoes into the pot, usually outside the door, then
Hmm.
carried that back in and placed the skib on top of the pot, or if they had a table on top of that, and people ate from the basket. Their
So all the excess water would run through the basket.
Exactly, exactly. And it would be taken outside the door so that it would run out on what they call the street, which was
Yeah.
a kind of a cobbled stone yard in front of the house.
Okay. And then they'd hang it back up to dry, isn't that right?
Exactly. Yeah, they would wash it and hang it up to dry, and from there it came the idea that it would do as a decorative item. And
Ah,
Kenny's bookshop, when it was in Galway City, it's out now uh, an estate a little bit further out than the city, but
okay.
they used to have four of those hanging on the wall, and
Yes.
I made a few of those over the years for them.
Yeah. No, I just think it's fascinating. You see something like that and you think, oh, that's a lovely basket. And I think I'm very rudely mentioned to you. It looks like something they make a collection in the church with,
Oh yes,
which I
well,
think you were disgusted at. But
and
then
I haven't
you told me
discussed
the
it,
real
but
reason.
yeah, I was also thinking you'd be a bit optimistic to need one that large anyway.
That's true. That's true. Okay, we'll move on then.
So there are some varieties of willow standing there.
Yes.
That's new season willow. The purpley color is called daphnoid. It is originally from the Caucasian region, I think, of Europe. Uh,
Hmm.
and the yellowish or green color is what would have used for making donkey creels.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
And
And
there's some
there are
wood.
frameworks of wood there hanging, and that is bog pine, and they've been assembled and cleaned, so they're ready now to make baskets from.
Okay.
And the circles are hoops that we would use to keep baskets in shape. The board underneath there is a board that I would use for making baskets because I don't usually work on a table if I'm making regular baskets.
All right.
And
Yeah.
then some more willow, and that's a
Yeah.
yeah.
And then the really important part, the tools of
Oh,
the
the
trade.
tools. That's right. Yeah, it's a very basic toolkit for a basket maker, so you can get equipped for less than €100, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Looks
Um,
like it.
uh,
A clothes peg. What's that for?
good question. I don't know why it's there.
All right.
Just
You were
have
just trying to
well,
make it look busy, were you?
yeah. Well, the wire brush is for a final piece of cleaning of the wood, but I have no idea why the clothes peg is there.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Knife and the sharpening stone and the strop and the secateurs, that's kind of basically what you need. There would
Yeah.
be a wrapping iron normally, but I'd say it's on the floor in use.
Okay. And you've got a thing there on the right-hand side, which looks like a sharpening.
Exactly, that's for sharpening the
Yeah.
knife.
And then the one beside it with a curve, would
That's
that
my
be for
knife.
harvesting?
No, no, that's my knife. I have another one for harvesting, so that's the shop knife, the one
All
I
right.
use in the workshop or the studio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you use for harvesting? Is just as a matter of interest.
I use a larger hook, but
Yeah.
we also harvest quite a bit of the willow now by um, a machine.
Yeah.
It's essentially a glorified garden rotavator with a finger bar mower, which we've
Okay.
adapted to make it quite narrow, and we can cut the willow that way as well.
Yes.
And
Okay.
that is the steaming box then, and you can see the cook
Sorry.
beside it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry. I'll just go back to
that's
that.
fine. That's fine. Yeah,
There.
so that's it. You can see it's just a thing made to boil water, a
Yeah.
glorified electric kettle. I think it's for steaming wallpaper originally.
All
And
right.
drive it into that chamber. There's a lid that goes on the box, and I weight it down and then give it an hour steam. And it means I can even have willow in beautiful condition on a cold winter's day.
Okay.
Wasn't
So
previously
there's two
possible.
processes. There's lying them into it.
Yeah.
Isn't that right? Into the actual water.
Oh yes, so soaking first, which might be
Soaking.
7 days, 5 days minimum, could be
Hmm.
7 or 8 days, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of basket makers in the past didn't like working with willow with the skin on, because it takes so long in terms of pre-planning. You
Yeah.
have to think about your basket 8 or 9 days before you make it.
Okay. That's very interesting, Joe. But simple.
Yes, yes, and basket making is quite simple.
Hmm.
And in a 4-day course, for instance, you will learn the basics of how to make a basket.
Yeah.
But a lot of things that are simple can also be complicated in the sense that I would not say that I've ever made a totally perfect basket. There's always something not quite, you
Yeah.
know, it's an imperfect material, if you wish. So,
Yes. Yes. But I mean, in a sense, that's what makes it unique.
probably, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just looking at some of the comments that have been made here. Um, Catherine just mentions the book is out of stock in Charlie Byrne's shop. Well, in that case, we'll go straight to you.
No, well, it's they're waiting for from the publisher. It'll be there in the next week, I think.
Oh, very good. Okay. All right. Maria Gabriela Serpi says, Joe, what you do is definitely art. She agrees with me.
Okay.
Bravo.
Yeah.
And that's Maria from Rome.
Yeah.
Marianne says, did a course with Joe years ago in the studio outside Westport, was brilliant.
Hmm.
Um, Maria comes back with any human expression of creativity and imagination done with skill and beauty is art. Agree.
Hmm.
Catherine asks, if you were planting willow from scratch, how long would it take before it can be harvested? And while you're waiting, can it be bought anywhere else? Yeah, good
Yeah,
question.
it is a good question because it's one of the frustrating things when I was doing courses for people was that I didn't sell willow.
Hmm.
My son Kieran is doing the courses now, and he also sells willow from. He has a studio in the Craft Village in Spiddle in
Yes.
County Galway. So he sells willow, and there's a guy in the Midlands called Barry Noyce grows his own willow and sells it. He may also have some available. So
Hmm.
one could get that information from the Irish Basket Makers Association.
All right.
What I can say about the growing of willow, you will plant willow in March, April, and that November, provided the ground is clean, in other words, that you've planted through a membrane, you will harvest willow. Now, the first year's growth won't be straight, it will be grown outwards a little bit like strawberry runners. So, that depends a little bit on the variety, but you still have to harvest that willow. You can use it for planting if you wish, and you could weave something from it.
Yes.
But the following year, you're likely to have a proper harvest. So by 2 years, you will be harvesting your own
Yeah.
usable willow.
I mean, that's not a lot of time.
No, it's not. No,
No.
no.
Very
And
good.
the same willow bed should then give you a harvest for a minimum of 10 years and perhaps up to 20. In France, almost all of the small growers would usually have a life for their bed of 10 to 15 years and then
Hmm.
they move on and there's a lot of small scale willow growing by basket makers in France.
I
Uh,
see.
so
Yeah.
where I was looking for ideas about say not harvesting by hand,
Hmm.
small scale harvesting, um, I would have got some of those ideas from French basket makers.
Okay. And finally, before we go on to look at some of your work, Monica says, Joe, how do they steam the willow back in the day?
I think the answer was that they didn't for the most part.
Ah.
Most people just soaked, and in winter and spring, they would tend to use what we call semi-green willow. Willow
Hmm.
that was cut in November and woven about 6 to 8 weeks later. There'd be a little bit of shrinkage, but not very much, and it was fine for frame baskets. If they did steam willow, they would have actually boiled a fire and or lit a fire rather and boiled water and driven it through in that way,
Yeah.
like an outdoor steaming box. They would tend to use that still for some coppice uh,
Yes.
crafts. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're going to go straight and have a look at some of the items we've been talking about. So talk me through the first one we're looking at here.
Okay, so that's a curved log turf basket, a commercial basket of my own design that I suppose I was making for 30 years. So when I started making baskets first, I was very interested in curved forms because it's a bit more difficult than a straight one. But it took me a few years to get that level of shaping.
Yes.
But I've made, I'd certainly say, several hundred of those in my time.
And would you use those hoops you showed us in your studio to
You would
create that
use you'd
bulge?
You would use it, and you'd also have to tie it to bring it back in. So it's a
Yes.
combination of hoops and ties. Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. And this is the donkey
That's the donkey creel, and that
reel.
would have been the basket I was saying that my neighbor Tommy came down to show me.
Yeah.
So you can see the pieces sticking up when the basket is made.
Hmm.
That's when it's pulled up from the ground. So the opening weave on that, which is on the top of the basket, that's called a bunya bale, or I translate it as the mouth whale. And that particular weave is unique to Ireland, Scotland, and a little corner of Wales. Nowhere else in the world.
I see. Interesting.
Yeah.
And is that a double basket, or is it just?
There's no
Could be, the way normally you might see in a donkey, you see two, one at
true,
each side.
exactly. You would need a pair if you're putting them on a
Yeah.
donkey, yeah, one for either side. So they're panniers, yeah. But they
Yes.
were also used as a general farm basket here. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
So those are coracle frameworks, and I just put that material called hazel, but I just put them in because it's the same technique as the creel, the same mouth whale and the same idea. Again, you start on the ground, and the floor of the boat or the coracle is the last part to be woven.
So it's a boat. I've seen this
It's a
in
boyne currach,
Wales. Hmm?
yeah, a boyne currach.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, and you know the modern currach, which is now lath and everything like that,
Hmm.
going way back in the 1800s, they would have been probably more likely to have been made from hazel. That's a Connemara lobster pot. So
Hmm.
there's one man left alive making these. Um, it was
What would distinguish it as being a Connemara lobster pot?
Well, the lobster pots down in Munster, there was no traditional lobster fishing there. It's very clear from Tomas O'Crohan's book of the Blascus, the Island Man.
Yeah.
They didn't fish for lobster. So when they started fishing for lobster in, I think, about 1890 to 1910, the French guys who were buying it showed them how to make the pots. So they make Breton style pots.
Ah,
So
interesting.
they're not an indigenous style of pot. So that's kind of the big difference. This is more like a creel because it's the finish is interwoven. So
Mm.
the base of that is also the last thing to be made.
Yeah.
So that's one from willow, and the
Hmm.
next one is from heather. So this for me was
Oh,
quite an amazing material.
yeah.
It's only used in Northwest Mayo, and they used to come down from the Inishkays and that general Belmullet area, and they would harvest heather from the slopes, the steep slopes in Achill.
Hmm.
And um, so when I was doing the basket making in Ireland book, I kind of felt, well, I have to try to make one of these pots. And
Yes.
um, the first one I had to go at was a bit of a flop, to be honest with you. It was
Hmm.
too bulky and wide. Um, but that one I think is fine. And subsequently, it kind of introduced me to the whole idea of weaving with other materials. So
Yes.
um, that's been very useful when I wanted to make nests, for instance, how to handle heather and trying out materials that don't seem super flexible initially.
Okay. All right.
So that's a wall of skibs, yeah. And one of the ones on the left corner has a special wheel-like base. Most of them are grid bases, but the one
Hmm.
on the left and right corner, I think, are,
There. Yeah.
yeah, that's Joyce Country base, I call it. And
Hmm.
the last man alive making that style was Tommy on Tommy.
I see. Your neighbor.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. And you told us the history about how they were used and so
yeah,
on. It's
yeah.
very interesting. Yeah. Okay. Now this is you weaving,
Yeah,
and while we're looking at that, to me, it seems as if it quite could be quite hard on the hands. Is it?
it can be. I think mainly the skin on your fingers, especially on the tips, gets a little bit hard, like a guitar player's would.
Hmm.
Very occasionally, some people get a bit of repetitive stress syndrome in the muscles of the thumbs, but
Yes.
otherwise, I think it's not too bad. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
I've been relatively lucky, I think, in that respect.
Yes. Now, here's some raw material
Yeah,
lying
so that's
around.
bog pine,
Yeah.
only minimally cleared up, and you can actually see some of the newly harvested willow around as well.
Hmm.
Um, and the brown dust on the concrete apron there is stuff that has been cleaned off the wood on the underside. It's essentially particles of peat. And I
Yes.
suppose what I'm at there is combining pieces of wood to see in what way they might work to make a basket.
Yeah. Okay. And this is one of the fields that you grow willow.
Yes, so that's taken from the hill above and looking down on it. It doesn't have to be wetland. That's a misconception. Um, we have our willow growing in what would be our best land, as in our meadowland,
Hmm.
fields that used to be for saving hay. Um, but the different varieties you can see there, you can see through a kind of a coloring grade. So I thought that was one of the interesting thing about that.
Yeah.
That you can see the varieties of willow. Each variety would be planted separately.
Yeah. Yeah. And would there be reasons why you might cultivate them at different years or on different years because they take on a different characteristic or something as they grow? Or am I just making that up?
No, no, you would harvest every year, Alan,
Yeah.
and so but when you would be planting out your willow bed, this problem is you're making choices for 10 years hence.
Hmm.
So, for instance, if your style of basket making were to change and you decided, I no longer wish to make creels, but you've planted large rods that are suitable for making
Ah,
creels. You
yeah.
still have those rods and you must harvest them every year because if you don't harvest them every year, they will get branchy. They'll
Ah,
become tree-like. So
yeah.
there, if you like, we're treating trees and training them to be shrubs by cutting them annually.
I understand. Yeah. All right. That's interesting. Now we get on to the artistic baskets. And is this a relatively new departure of yours?
So since I started making these about 20 years ago, not
Mm.
before the year 2000 anyway, I
All right.
finished basket making in Ireland in 2001, that book, and I began to think, are there other ways I could use these techniques? Because I realized not many people want creels, I suppose. And um, I got a bursary in 2006, which was wonderful. It wasn't a huge amount of money. I think it was about five or 6,000
Hmm.
euro. But it gave me the freedom to make things that I thought people wouldn't want to buy.
Yes, exactly.
It's out of that time that a lot of this work began.
Mm.
And I kind of thought, well, I'll do this for 6 months or a year, but I never really stopped.
Mm.
From there on in, it always became something I would spend some months at throughout the rest of my time.
And also presumably something that uh, buyers, as in customers, found intriguing and very interesting and very beautiful looking.
Well, yeah, but I didn't know that. So I was
No.
originally felt that these wouldn't be sellable or saleable.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway,
And
it worked out. Yeah.
and I mean, probably a silly question, but was your intention to have these as a functioning piece of work or more decorative?
More decorative, I think,
Yeah.
but sometimes I could say that I wasn't totally sure either. I was kind
Yes.
of working a little bit more by instinct, I think. That the wood in that now, by the way, is driftwood. So
Right.
usually the driftwood would be where somebody might gift me some driftwood because I have very little access to it here.
All right. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's a call out to everybody if they've got some interesting driftwood. This is lovely. Tell me
So
about
this,
this.
this is a piece of twisted rowan wood,
Hmm.
mountain ash, and some creeper or vine curled around it while it was growing and shaped it into that. I got it from a man called Pete Beaumont, who's done a good few courses with me. So I call the pod from Pete's gift for that reason.
Lovely. Yeah. And is it very, very difficult to get this shape, and the undulations here, all this sort of thing?
Well, the wood, I have to follow the wood. So,
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so the wood kind of, and that's why, I mean, I could make forms without the wood, but I
Hmm.
think it wouldn't be as interesting. And for me, then the wood occasionally it'll make life a little bit difficult, but I've got quite used to being able to manipulate the willow in that way.
Mm.
That's also quite large. Um, it's you know, if I make things that are too large, they're kind of non-commercial a bit or more difficult.
Yes.
But they're kind of the fact that the wood is there, I have to follow that form.
Yeah.
So I suppose most of my work is not commissioned that way. It's dictated by the pieces of wood that I have and what I feel is to become from it.
Yeah, exactly. And would you do preliminary sketches or would you just get straight into it?
I get just straight into it. Alan.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Now, again, another lovely piece.
Yeah, so that's a very early piece, and I'd find a few flaws with that now.
Hmm.
Nowadays, I would have rods coming up around the top to secure the weaving to the wood in a greater fashion, but it's okay. I like the shape of it myself, and it's from 2006, so it's at a time when I was still experimenting a bit, but the
Okay.
wood itself, I think, is very dramatic in it. Yeah.
Isn't it? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. As is this.
Yeah, well, that's a piece of beech wood. There was a tree came down in a storm out near Clonbur. There's no beech growing much west of Loch Mask,
Hmm.
but I saw it and I asked for permission to go out and cut some of the tree holes.
Yes.
But there was one very raw piece on it, so I had to incorporate a bit of bogwood with that. That is driftwood that I picked up myself.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, that previous one, yeah,
I'm sorry, I moved on. Yeah.
that's okay, that's fine. And so there's a and that then is driftwood. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're starting to secure them a little more, I notice.
Yes, you see, there's it means that if the wood is falling down,
Hmm.
as in sloping severely,
Yeah.
um, you can still work with it if you do that technique
All
because
right.
it secures it in a better way.
Yeah. Okay. Now, is this different? Is this the one with stone?
There's a stone inside in that. That's a piece of, I call them tree holes. There
Yeah.
was a guy called Alan who worked as a tree surgeon, and once he realized I was looking for pieces of wood. Now, I may not have got that from Alan. I might have cut that piece myself because it's a piece of an ash tree um, that was at the back of our barn
Yeah.
and fell down. But there were a lot of these, where a fork in the tree,
Hmm.
which if you're trying to make milled wood from it is a disadvantage. But from my point of view, it makes it interesting. So
Yeah.
in the fork, I've suspended a stone then. But that pot is very large. It's about 1.2 meters. So that was actually a commission for a crowd called Loewe, who
Yeah.
are a Spanish fashion house, but they also run a craft prize, and I got shortlisted for that in 2017 or 18, I think. And
Hmm.
I also got some subsequent work from them from it, but it also brought my work to the attention of people, I suppose, a bit.
Yes. And we're going to see a group of pods that you did for them in a while. So we'll discuss that a little bit more. This is a rock, isn't it?
This is a stone from the
Mm.
Aran Islands. So Dune, I call that, or fort. And that was the kind of commission to do something about that was inspired by Aran. And it was for Galway City Museum. And I think it opened just around the time of the pandemic. So it was to
Yeah.
be part of Galway City of Culture 2020.
All right. Okay.
But the exhibition is still there in the museum,
Is
actually.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Roisin de Butler has work on it, and it's Alan Meredith, for instance.
Hmm.
Yeah. So these are pods with sea stones. Yeah, and it might be a field stone at the. The other one just shows you what I do with an arrow end. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. And this is wood.
Yes. Yeah.
Is it?
They're all
Yes.
pieces of ash. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they look like some sort of nuts that would come out from a tree or fall from a tree, aren't they?
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you sort of inspired by that, or
Just by the pieces of wood themselves. Two of
yeah?
them are forks, and so the other two I've had to bolt another piece of wood on, to make it a closed form. But the one with the gnarl growing out of it, it's just where there was a branch and the tree grew in that shape. So
Yes, yes. I mean, they really are beautiful, beautiful pieces, and to see them up close is quite dramatic also. It doesn't really do justice when you see photographs like this. Now, this is the one during an exhibition, is a spring summer show of Loewe.
yeah,
Uh,
that was their fashion show. I
that was a
mean, it
fashion
seems like
show.
an awful lot of trouble to go to for something that's seen in an hour.
Yeah,
Yeah, but that's it. It's that world, you know.
yes, yes.
Um, yeah.
And what impact has that had when you got that award from them or shortlist and commission? You know, that put you on the map sort of internationally, didn't it?
It probably did a bit, but I
Yeah.
had done a few exhibitions for a gallery in Edinburgh called the Scottish Gallery,
Yes.
and they were very supportive at a time where the support was uh, very meaningful to me because I was still making these pieces of work that I wasn't sure anyone would buy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Whereas by the time the Loewe shortlist thing came along, I was already had some clients for that type of work. But
Yeah.
it certainly was a huge help, and brought my work to
And would
attention
you
to more
hazard a
people.
guess at the proportion of uh, export versus domestic sales of your
But
work
it's
now?
it's about for that type of work, for the artistic work, it would
Yeah.
probably be about 80 or 90%
Hmm. Yeah.
export. Yeah,
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
And any particular country stands out as being,
UK, Europe,
yeah,
and USA. Yeah,
USA.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
Not as much USA. Yeah, but
Okay.
all three. Yeah.
But you do have an exhibition on at the moment in Japan, haven't you?
That's yeah. There's two exhibitions there. One is in Osaka, and the other one is in Tokyo.
Yeah.
One is being curated by Joseph Walsh, with
Hmm.
a galleryist from Japan,
Yes.
and that is called Rin, and that'll be in the Glucksman in Cork, I think, in the end of July for a few months.
Oh, very good. It's moving to there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Very good. Okay. Now we've three more slides to show, and they're completely different.
I've been making this since about oh 2014, 2015.
Hmm.
And I'm not quite sure what gave rise to the idea, except generally to explore the idea of belonging in the world or being at home.
Yes.
Um, these particular ones are made from dried grass, but
Uh,
mostly I work with twigs.
okay. And to actually form them, you know, what's involved? Is it almost like basket making?
Well, these are much more like basket making
Yes,
in
probably.
the
Yeah.
sense that the woodier ones.
Hmm.
So I kind of start with a ring. When I started first, I was starting with a base of woven twigs and try to build it up. But now I start again at the top of the nest
Yeah.
and make a kind of a wreath and then kind of incorporate things into it in that way.
Okay. And then this is the last one, and you've got a lot of lichen or depending
Yes.
on how you
Oh,
pronounce.
I love lichen
Yeah.
as a material, and if you manage to get lichen encrusted twigs, I try to use every scrap of them. Um, and the material on the left side there is birch, and the one in the middle would be um, made from root hairs. So, in other words, dig in the
Oh yeah.
garden. Yeah, it's the fine roots of trees.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yes.
Yeah. Waste nothing,
Fascinating.
Alan, you
Yeah.
know?
Now, for those of you who live in Dublin, just by coincidence, I was in town in the Powers Court Centre the other day, literally 2 or 3 days ago, and I noticed some of your work there on display, and I said, "Oh, look at that! That
Mm.
guy's going to be speaking to me on Saturday." So you have
Yes,
pieces there if people are around.
yes, they take some nests and maybe one or two sculptural things as well.
Yeah,
And there's
yeah.
also one other place in Dublin, Stable. Um, they sometimes have skids and other work of mine as well. Not always, but sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um, now I'm just trying to go to some comments before we allow people in. Um, Carol says, I've been using willow to protect my flowers, but I can't get them to last during the stormy weather. I need to get some lessons. I put down uprights, then weave through them. Would Joe or Kieran have some tips if I pop into him?
I what I would say is that almost every corner of the country there are people doing courses.
Yeah.
So in if you're in the East Coast, for instance, Wicklow Willow.
Hmm.
So
All
uh,
right. Yes.
Wicklow Willow is easy to remember. They do courses,
Hmm.
and they would in a few hours you would learn a fairly good technique for making plant supports. But it would take a few hours. You know,
Yes.
it's not something that you could show in a moment. You know.
I understand. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. Catherine says, I have a beautiful basket in my studio bought from Kieran in Spiddle. So useful also.
Mm,
There you are.
yeah.
Louise Newman says, I too have a beautiful turf basket I got from my 50th, also pieces of bog pine, which I adore. Sounds lovely.
Mhm.
And Paddy says, whatever about the word artist, some of the finest contributors to Irish visual culture are makers, such as Joe himself, Francis Lamb, Alan Meredith, Grania Watts, Alison Kay, Roger Bennett, Emmett Kane, etc. Thanks for that, Paddy. Carol, I have a basket I use a lot. It's very old. If I wax it, would it help preserve it? That's a question.
What I would do with it is I would put it out in a day's rain rather than wax it.
Would
Put
you?
it out in a day's rain, and
That's
it
a bit
will
counterintuitive.
absorb moisture back into itself and then dry it, and it will tighten up and it'll have a whole new life.
Very useful advice. Thanks for that. Maria Gabriela Serpi says, how long does it take to harvest willows to be ready for working with them? So how
Well,
long after you cut them?
oh yes, sorry, not
Yeah.
the process of cutting itself, but
No.
about 6 weeks, and you could make something, but it might shrink. So that was the real old tradition right through Europe. Very
Hmm.
few people used to soak their natural willow.
Yeah.
Um, but if you do dry them out fully, then the soaking process or the drying process might be 3 or 4 months. And in my own case, I don't use willow until it's about 8 or 9 months. It's hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then I take it out of storage and soak it.
Yeah. Very good. Thanks for that. Thank you, Maria. Maria, Carol says the work is amazing and inspirational. I'm going to run through these because there's quite a few of them, and I'd like to get a few people in person. Catherine says, how's the wood attached to the weaving?
Well, the uprights are drilled into the wood.
Hmm.
That's the beginning
Right.
part, okay?
Yeah.
Uh, which means that for the first time in my making, I am also using a power tool, as
Yeah.
in a drill.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Which I didn't show in the um,
And your tools?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't never even thought of it, but
No.
it is a necessary part of those pieces of
Fair
work.
enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Louise says beautiful shapes. Marianne says thanks, Alan and Joe, for an interesting talk. It was great to see again and his work. Must do another course.
Okay. Yeah.
Catherine says, could you use animal bones instead of wood? Have you ever
Yes,
done that?
yes, I have done that. I've only you'd be lucky to find something, but I found the pelvic bones of a pony. So
Oh,
I did make a basket from it.
yeah.
I sold it to the Loewe group.
Did you? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good question, Catherine.
yeah.
Desmond reminds me of the work of the American wood sculptor Martin Poirier.
I know of his work
Do
actually. Yeah,
you? Okay.
yeah. Somebody gave me a present of a book of his
All
only
right.
in the last 4 or 5 years, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Malky says, amazing art reflecting nature and shaped by nature. Yes.
Mm.
Louise, how long do some of your larger pieces with wood take?
They
Like
might
that very
take
big long one. Do you remember that
Yeah,
one?
it might take 60, 70 hours weaving, but it has to be done within 6 days or seven
Oh, that's
days.
an interesting point. Yeah.
Because if I can't get it made,
Yeah.
the willow will dry out.
Yes. Yeah.
So, to that extent, when I go making a big piece, I'm kind of a little bit, it becomes uh, something I have to do, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Um, Dennis says, what are the qualities that make a good basket? Have you ever used the gorse bush wood?
No, but they did used to make pots out of gorse wood out in the west coast near Roundstone, and I couldn't figure out how could you make something from that. I have used gorse wood, by the way, for collars for my own baskets, all right, for artistic baskets.
Mm-hmm.
But the really fine pieces of gorse that used to spread around the rocks around Roundstone and Carna, they did use that sometimes for making pots.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that. Brendan Moore McCann says, beautiful marriage of nature and skill. Most interesting interview. Thank you. Thank you, Brenda. And Hugh Cummins says, very informative introduction to a highly skilled craft stroke art. Thanks, Hugh. Okay, now I'm going to allow everybody to unmute themselves. I know a lot of you have already asked questions, but please do come on and say hello and ask a question or make a comment. Anyone like to ask a question? Hands up.
Make a statement.
Yeah, make a statement.
Yeah, no, it's just when we had the Market House Craftworks, the Wooden Willow show, which Joe was in.
Hi, Jane. Yeah.
Yeah, was one of the most popular of the 3 years we had the gallery. That was one of the most popular shows. And what I loved about it was going up there, the smell of the oil from the wood and the willow. There was a combination, there was a smell in that exhibition that was really lovely.
Good. Thanks.
Yeah, and it was great. And I have one of your little nests.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, thanks for that. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would like to say hi, Joe. It's
Oh,
a
yeah.
privilege to hear one of your talks. And I just want to add one other dimension to your practice that you didn't have time to mention, how generous as a mentor and as a teacher you yourself have been through the years. I have the privilege to learn from you, and it was just really interesting to see how you just took a challenge of teaching someone with different needs as a adventure that we will all experience and learn from each other. And it was really humbling, and it has stayed with me, and I try to use it in my own practice. So apart from beauty that is born from necessity, as you say, it's just amazing to know that the grassroots of any knowledge come from people as generosity to share their skills.
Thank you very much, Nikki.
Thank you, Nikki. Yeah.
And very nicely put.
Yeah.
Thanks. Louise,
Alan,
did you want to say something?
Alan, can I ask a question?
Morning, yeah. Sorry, just 1 second, Louise.
Yeah, I have a lot of baskets for flower arranging, and I've been gifted baskets over the years, and I have a few very old ones. If I put them out in today's rain, which is constant, like they will revive a little bit, and maybe they can be sprayed.
Oh. If provided they haven't been varnished, they will absorb moisture from the air, and that should tighten them up and make them better. Yeah.
Okay, and can that be repeated every year to keep them alive?
Absolutely. Yeah, once a year is a great thing to do. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's most helpful.
Yeah.
So, Joe, will I put that out?
Yeah.
It would be no harm, Louise. Yeah. I mean,
all right.
It doesn't need it.
You showed me where to go years ago, and I got that.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that gorgeous? Yeah.
Yes, it is beautiful. Yeah.
My grandchildren see all sorts of
shapes.
Demons.
That's it. Yeah, I'm the same. I just think it's so suggestive. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Okay.
Joe,
Anya, I see you've got your...
Yeah, I was just wondering, because nobody is working the bogs anymore, is it becoming way more difficult to find bog deal now?
It is.
It's no longer coming to the surface.
Yeah, and the jerks is the source, as far as I can see, is gone. Almost everything that was there has been gathered up.
That's what Pádraig told me when I told him to get me some.
Yeah, so that you're absolutely right. Now you'll get very occasional pieces, but not so much. Yeah. It's a rare find now.
And what are you going to substitute it with?
I don't need to substitute at this stage because I think I'm getting too old for worrying about it. But driftwood would be the way to go, I think. Anyone who lives near a coastal region where there would be trees, I mean, driftwood is often very, very beautiful. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Okay.
Lovely. Fantastic. Any other questions or comments?
Yes,
I-
please.
Oh, go
Yes,
ahead.
Yeah.
that
Hi, Joe. It's Carol.
Carol. Yeah.
Just wanted to say thank you for the info on the basket. In fact, it's been out in the all weather all the time, and I just thought it was looking a bit dull. So I leave it out in the bad weather. So, because when I collect my vegetables and stuff, I forget to put it in, and it's,
But what happens if things are outdoors all the time, then it will decay.
Okay.
So my suggestion was to put it out for 24 hours of rain and then bring it in and dry it and then treat it as an indoor basket, because when I used to make those skibs, say for Kenny's, for putting out on their wall, they were out in all weathers, and after a while they will decay. Okay.
One other question, sorry. Was either you or your son ever in the Midlands? I got a beautiful basket years and years ago in the Midlands over near Abbey Shrool. He lived at the side of the road and had hens and 3 kids.
No, but that's what shows you that there are basket makers really scattered right throughout the country. Yeah.
And he's not there anymore. I don't know where he's gone. So,
but there's a very nice in the Midlands now. There's a very nice basketry near Moat. The name just won't come into my head at this moment. A girl, Pauline Hogan, and 2 others are manning it, and it'll be a very nice place to get a basket.
oh, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Okay.
Carol. Roisin, I see your hand raised there.
Yes, I do.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm good, thank you. I just wanted to pay tribute to Joe Hogan because I'm quite surprised that everybody doesn't actually know him or know his work.
No, that was just me. That was just me, Roisin.
Because he is such a significant figure in the story of Irish craft, has contributed so much to our cultural heritage, and internationally is known, as one of the, as we call him, a sea of Irish cultural protection, in a way of translating what was something that was part of our everyday to something that is quite extraordinary as an expression of land and atmosphere and environment. And as Nicky said earlier, incredibly generous with his information and support to craftspeople. We see him as a mentor, as a wise man, to whom we look for guidance, and he is so highly respected in amongst the craftspeople of Ireland. So I don't really know why there's no Estána for craftspeople. But I think that Joe Hogan should be in Estána, and I think that it's something possibly that we should be discussing, that he should be elevated in that particular way. For Mahagi.
Thank you so much, Roisin. There you are now, Joe. There's
that's a
compliment for you.
That's too much for me now.
I know. Well, I suppose it's no wonder that you did also. We should point out, receive a Life Achievement Award from President Michael D. Higgins back in 1921.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, 2021.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And it's lovely to get those awards, but they're not really, I suppose, the point of why we do what we do.
No, fair enough. But I mean, you're due the acknowledgement, and I think that's it was very well put by Roisin.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else before we go? Anyone else?
Quick question. Is Stephen O'Connell, Joe, the guy in the Potter in Kerry, in near Ballinskelligs?
No, he's in Clonakilty in Cork.
That's
He's a lovely gallery there. It's quite special. He has worked by, the last time I was down, certainly an exhibition by Alan Meredith, which I happened to see there. But it's not huge, but everything in it is very well chosen, I think. And it's a very nice gallery. So it's a kind of a labor of love for Stephen, I think. And I hope it does well for him. Yeah.
Thank you.
Could I just echo
Yes, Mary.
Roisin's tribute to Joe? I've known Joe since we were both at college in Galway together. And it was my privilege to open the European Baskets exhibition in the National Design and Craft Gallery some years ago in Kilkenny. And I remember thinking back at the end of that year, what was the best art, craft, visual exhibition that I'd seen that year? And certainly the European Baskets one was. It was absolutely astonishing. And I really pay tribute to Joe and his fellow curator of that exhibition, Mary Butcher, for bringing the European tradition of baskets to our attention in Ireland and setting, I suppose, the Irish basket making tradition in a context. It was very interesting, enjoyable, and very enlightening. So I love Joe's work. I love the fact that he's such an advocate for craft, and he's a man in today's climate in the craft sector of considerable courage, as is Roisin. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mary. That was lovely. Thank you so much for that. Okay, I think that's it. Anyone else just want to make a comment before we call it a day? No? I think we've all said what we wanted to say. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks to everyone.
Yeah. Joe, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your knowledge with us this morning. It's been a fascinating chat with you. And I'd like to thank everyone who's been here as well and for their input also. You can see you have a lot of fans, Joe. And, you know, there'll be a lot more people who'll be watching this after once we put it up on YouTube. So we do appreciate all that you do. And thank you, Joe.
Okay, thank you, Alan, and thanks to everyone. Okay, bye-bye. So on.
Okay, bye, everybody. Now, this is the last live show for this particular season. We have one that's recorded, which will be a surprise. We'll tell you about in a week or so. And that's from Australia. And then we're going to resume back in the autumn with a new series of artists and other people of interest. Let's put it that way. So again, thanks all for watching wherever you are, and enjoy the rest of the weekend and enjoy your summer, and look forward to seeing you back in the autumn. Cheerio, everyone. Bye-bye.